The occasional podcast. The occasional podcast. And we're back this week with Julie Mullins of Stereophile. It's the occasional podcast. The occasional podcast.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Julie Mullins from Stereophile magazine. Very excited to have you on today. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great. And I'm on also a little plug for Analog Planet as well.
Well, I know you got a lot of projects going on and you've got some stuff even coming down the pipe maybe, but I wanted to kind of just touch base with you because I love unique perspectives and I feel like you offer a very unique perspective. You've been in this as long as I have to say that. I've seen you at the shows. It's been wonderful to catch up with you over the years. But before we get into everything that you've kind of done as a reviewer and in the industry, do you want to just kind of start off how you got into high-end audio? I'm be fascinated with your story, how you first maybe got into music and then how that parlayed into a love for hi-fi. Designed and handcrafted in France since 1985, JMF Audio builds a complete ecosystem of reference-grade amplification, preamplification, phono stages, power line filtering, and cables, all engineered with a singular focus, precision, to guarantee the desired musicality and expression for all genres of music. JMF Audio components are known for their fully balanced dual mono architectures, high current power delivery, and meticulous hand assembly, resulting in systems that prioritize signal integrity and long-term listening satisfaction over trend cycles or constant model turnover. Each piece is built to exacting standards with proprietary technologies and materials developed through decades of experience in both recording studio and high-end audio environments. The holistic approach of JMF Audio has led to solutions that are intended for listeners who want to stop chasing equipment and start focusing on the music. JMF Audio will be at the biggest room in the lobby of the HiFi Deluxe show, which is an 8-minute walk from the Vienna high-end show.
It's a bit of a long story, multifaceted, but I'll try to give the high points anyway. So, and it has been a rather long journey, but the music part and hi-fi did converge early on. My father is an audiophile, and happily he's still with us, getting on in years. Like we all are going that direction. But and so I have very early memories of him being very into hi-fi and music at home. So. And I've written about this actually in a My Back Pages piece and referenced it, but just calling him for dinner, for example, he had the man cave set up basically. So, but it wasn't off limits to us certainly. But to call him for dinner, you'd open the door or the basement door, and this big burst of music would come out. So
it's a good memory.
Often classical or opera, but he goes classic rock, jazz. He's got some vintage blues, a lot of soundtracks, very far-reaching taste, which certainly inspired me along the way. And I give him great credit for exposing me to a lot of different styles of music and doing some fun kind of listening demos. For example, when CDs first came out, I remember being a young kid. Of course, now they improved much since the early days, but having me stand in the center and listen to the same A/B vinyl and CD, so these kinds of things were a lot of fun. And my sister and I thought the opera was mostly silly, but we did get a lot of exposure to it. And then music otherwise at church, we did musicals. I was involved in the handbell choir and singing choir and chorus at school. I played oboe starting at age 10 and did private lessons and was in the school orchestra and so on. And I danced most of my life, so that's all very music immersive. But anyway, and I'll get to the hi-fi bit too beyond that for myself, but I got a system beyond a kiddie record player where I'd listen to things like Disney soundtracks, or there was a Children's World folk music album, and that was like the Fisher-Price record player, right? The real vintage
Yellow
stuff.
tone, the orange tone arm, right? Plastic
Yeah,
tone arm.
that's the one. That's the one. And so beyond that, though, when I was 10, I received some very excellent, I don't even want to say hand-me-downs, but an Advent 300 tuner that had everything built-in phono, and of course the radio was the way to go at that time. I started collecting records, I mean, from when I had the kitty player and just kept them, and from the age of 10 on, often we'd go after, and, you know, church kind of dropped off. It was mostly a social thing, you know, by the time we were maybe mid-teen years. But anyway, we'd get a record, and my best friend and I would take 2 buses before we were old enough to drive up near the university areas here in Cincinnati, and would spend our allowance or babysitting money on records. So, and we'd shut ourselves in our room and listen to them. And I had an Audio Technica turntable and Infinity bookshelf speakers that I think had been my father's. So those I kept for a long time. I had the Advent tuner. I think I did sell it. I regret that a little, but some years back when I started reviewing gear and I needed, you know, just some space. So, but it's still, I mean, it was still kicking. It still worked great. It, you know, no problems. And the speakers I'd had them reconed and everything.
Oh, wow.
Infinities. But I wore the belt out on that turntable. There was a whole lot of listening to records and reading of smash hits or star hits, as it was known in the U.S. magazines, so obsessively into music. So that's the early part of exposure. And my father was an avid reader of the publications of both Stereophile and the Absolute Sound, which I later joined the staff of, which is an interesting story as well.
I've said this so many times on the podcast, but I love to hear the influence of friends and especially family when it comes to joining the hobby of hi-fi. It's such a great entry point, and I think there's like a built-in sense of community when you come in that way that's very special. I just think it's very special. Yeah. And a little known fact, I've never said this on the podcast before to my knowledge, but I also shared a similar path with music and church, because it was like part of the upbringing in the Midwest where I was. Like, if you were into music, there weren't too many avenues at a very young age that you could access music, but one of those was the church. So I have, you know, sang in all the choirs. That was like the only place to really get some exposure, and I had a great time, and a lot of learnings come out of that, even though, you know, it's tied to the church and such. But yeah,
right. But again, it was Presbyterian for the record, so it was fairly casual. You know, if you miss a week, it's kind of, you know, I mean, it was at least as much a social and very much a community and very heavily music oriented kind of situation. But they put on full-blown musicals, I mean, with costumes, so I was a part of those as well, some musical theater like The Music Man or Guys and Dolls, or, you know, a lot of them were classics that our parents and those even before them, like folks my grandparents' age, would have been immersed in. But I will add also quickly, at school, not only in band and symphony, I feel very grateful that there was pretty decent music education, I feel like. Like, we were playing Orff instruments. We had music every day in elementary school. It was just part of what we did. So we were playing on the little Orff instruments, I guess you'd call them variations of, like, mini marimbas or xylophones and things like that. I don't know if this was part of your world, but it was.
I think the one thing I remember most, and my memory is a little foggy about it, but I think fourth grade was everyone took the recorder. I don't know if that is just something that's a nationwide occurrence, or if it's something unique to my situation. But it was, you know, recorder, and from that launching point, they would allow you to then explore other instruments and to go into the band. Now, I think that is quite privileged. I'm not sure everyone has that experience, but it like usually started with a recorder and then moved on from there. And I enjoyed that path greatly. I'm very happy that I had the opportunity to experience that at such a young age, along with about as much music theory as my little brain could handle, which was also a great privilege I felt at the time.
Yeah. And I was constantly reading, you know, anything I could get my hands on. I mean, I even have old Rolling Stones or other, you know, as I got a little bit older. Of course, recording music off the radio. Another big step early in my hi-fi days for hands-on, a very massive addition to my system. And I'm not sure how this came about exactly. If it I don't know, I'd have to maybe check with my father, but I got an amazing, when cassettes were the bigger thing, because of course I'd want to record songs off the radio or off my record player, turntable and everything. But I had a Luxman dual cassette deck. And that was very, it felt very deluxe, and it was. I mean, it had a nice heavy feel, like the buttons, and they were like the toggle style buttons, and it was silver, and it had, and you could reverse or record, and I could make great mixtapes. I mean, that, of course, that was a thing, and being able to reverse or auto reverse, or I believe even maybe play in reverse. Pretty decent mixing capabilities or ways of playing with things there. And I think I eventually broke that or wore it out.
So you have a good, solid background in music and appreciation. How did that kind of evolve as you moved into post-high school and eventually kind of leads you down the path to writing?
From a writing standpoint, I was in broadly liberal arts programs, but a lot of natural science was part of that. So there was astronomy and physics and a well-rounded education, I feel like. But writing was a big part of what I was doing in most of my classes anyway. But later in my work life, I was working as a writer for some local newspapers. I started moonlighting doing that, and eventually worked for one of the newspapers, so that was another piece. And I was covering performing arts. I wrote a little bit about music occasionally. So fast forward to when I was writing for one of the newspapers here and some other publications here in Cincinnati, covering dance and other music, performing arts. Oh, also through high school, I might add, obsessively going to concerts. And I was pretty good about putting cotton in my ears, at least, if not earplugs. But so I did go see a ton of great live music. It was a lot more accessible at that time from a young age. I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to see a lot of these great bands as they were coming up in the indie alternative scene, and classical music too, a great symphony here. So I'd been going to that from a young age. It was even through school we would have that opportunity. Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra. So shout out there. So I wanted to plug that. But anyway, the writing about HiFi. So I'd gotten to know John and Kathy Vallon, John Vallon from The Absolute Sound, and partially through overlap of arts and culture world, but also the dance world. So Kathy had written about dance a lot. I had as well. And then she took another job, and then I backfilled the job that she left to go work for another publication. So I was already doing some writing, but the dance stuff specifically was how I came into doing that. Like I'd already done work for that editor. Yeah, I became more the de facto person for dance, but I was still writing about other things, and then joined staff for some years before newspapers really went down, went south. A lot of getting to know Jonathan Vallon, he needed help in editing and doing some other editorial tasks, and said, you've listened essentially all your life. I mean, we can teach you more of the deeper critical listening, although I did have some awareness of that growing up at home of the publications. So it really was this convergence of everything that it brought together, I feel like, a lot of the skills and passions and experiences I'd had up to then. And I'd also worked in digital marketing for some years, and then in-house for design firms and package design. So I had some other career things, but music, other performing arts were always present. I never stopped really loving that. When I did go away to school, though, I wasn't taking my vinyl with me, but I kept it. And I'd collected it over years, also going to record conventions with my father, or if I'd be out of town, go to we'd hit the record stores. So I'm very grateful and feel very lucky to have been able to collect and just, get exposed to certain classic stores that some of which aren't around anymore. But
what is the classic store in your mind in your area? Is there a favorite record store that you used to go to and maybe one that you go now?
Yeah, well, there are a bunch of them here still now. There's a surprising number of them in Cincinnati. For the size of the city, it's pretty remarkable. And indeed some record labels as well. Classic ones, there was Moles and Wizards. Everybody's Records is still around. So they may be the longest running holdout now. But Shake It Records over North Side, they have a label. They've been around for decades. There's Feel It Records. There's Plaid Room. There's Phil's Records. They're still around. They were around when I was in high school, at least at one location.
I feel like here on the West Coast, we have it easy because it's Amoeba Records, and people know, like, Amoeba Records. Yeah, it's huge, big. And every time I went there was like a musician like in the store, either performing a concert or browsing the records, at least the one in LA.
Yeah.
So like it's very LA in the Amoeba Records if you want to capture that essence, you know.
Oh, I've been there. No, it's fantastic. Yeah. And they did a series. I don't know if they're still running it, but the What's in My Bag.
Yeah.
And they would talk to well-known folks and quiz them on what what music they were picking up. Or those videos were fun. I remember some of those.
I'm in the San Francisco area now, and I actually have not been to the Amoeba up here in years, but I used to go to the LA so often. It was such a great experience. But I do need to get up to the Amoeba Records here, but we have a couple of local guys that I've connected with, and they do some good stuff. So I like to keep that alive, you know. Have you ever partaken in Record Store Day?
Oh, definitely.
Releases?
Absolutely. There get to be big lines. It's a big deal for a lot of them. But I have to say, some of the indie labels here in stores, some have gotten a little more selective in what they purchase, and we again have such a rich label scene here, I guess. That's certainly not quite as part of it, but if they get, if that draws more people in, it's win-win, both for the bigger releases that people are seeking out and the limited edition Record Store Day releases, certainly.
Is Cincinnati known for any artist in particular that's come out of there?
There are many, there are many. I can rattle off a few, but if I could interject too quickly, I wanted to ask, did you go to Rasputin's in San Francisco?
I have not been yet, no.
I don't know if it's still around, but that's one I remember going to there. I'm trying to think. I think I went to the Amoeba there. It's been a while, and I will add, I listen to digital too. I buy and listen to digital tracks. I have some from the old days of other downloading, and then I still have a decent CD collection as well. But
there you go, giddy up. I love
stream, that. Yes, I stream also often. But you were asking artist-wise. Yeah, there are a number of great artists, and I want to mention also King Records is a historic label that has gotten some more recognition, and there was a PBS documentary about that aired a few months ago that's worth checking out for sure. And
hell yeah.
It's an interesting label in that they had most labels, especially in that era of 50s and earlier, they would specialize more in, okay, we only do country and western, or only bluegrass, or only what they used to call race radio, or the R&B black and soul artists. And King did both. So they were really exceptional in that they did not make those distinctions. They saw value and wanted everyone's contribution regardless of race. So, and that's unique to this area. Cincinnati's at the north and south crux. So there's the bluegrass and a long African-American history as well. So it's kind of unique that it's a mashup of that. And it's an older city also for the area, for the Midwest. It peaked earlier than Chicago, let's say. So much smaller city. Some very well-known ones. There's Bootsy Collins. I'm trying to think of Ohio players. The Isley Brothers are from here. Classics. OJ's Midnight Star, if people remember them on that front. Ass Ponies, Wussy, Afghan Wigs. The National, they're probably the biggest export.
What are Taylor Swift's co-conspirators?
The recent era. So, and then Ohio, even more broadly. The Pretenders, Devo are from Akron. And that's a ways from here, but
I like to ask that question because I had a musician friend that I met from Minneapolis, and it cannot be overstated how much Prince shaped Minneapolis in terms of the music scene, what was available, the inspiration for these bands. They're in a cold climate, and so things can be a bit dramatic when you're things are limited for 6 months out of the year, right? And being in the music scene from there, I like to ask that question specifically because he really impressed upon me that Prince left such a big fingerprint on the music scene there that you could not but be affected, and it makes the entire thing, brings it all up. It brings the whole waterline up a little bit when you have something big to inspire you or contribute in some way. So I like to ask that because, you know, some of these like Midwestern cities, they get lost, and you got to remember that I think that great art can come from anywhere, and it's just nice to hear about these little stories that kind of pop up here and there, you know.
Well, in the breeders too. I mean, that's Kim and Kelly Deal. But
yeah.
So, and also there are so many great artists that have stuck around here that tour and that have opened up for great acts that are maybe more well known at this time, but that are really putting out great work. So that's something that is certainly appealing about this area here. A lot of really good quality musicians, really across genres. I mean, you can find almost anything from bluegrass to gypsy jazz to more avant-garde jazz to, I mean, of course, classical, certainly indie rock, analog synthesizers, and, you know, those kinds of more pioneering techno bands and just, I mean, all kinds of things. So there's really quite a lot to to explore. So more than I think people would expect. So.
You said that you were working at the Absolute Sound for a little while. Where did you exactly start? Did you start doing reviews more and more? Did you become like a staff writer? How did that kind of transition happen? And then what happened after you were at the Absolute Sound?
Yeah, well, I started off, I did a couple of sample assignments, which involved covering a sample review and then a hi-fi show, some coverage. And I did have someone take me around and introduce me to certain people at the hi-fi show, the initial one, which was Rocky Mountain Audio Fest.
Nice.
Rest in peace, or MAF.
Rest in peace. I was just going to say that.
Yes,
Rest in peace.
Yes. And shout out to Marjorie and
wonderful lady.
Everyone there. But again, I want to stress that this person, he did not tell me anything. He was specifically instructed, like, just introduce her, let her listen, let her see what she hears and how she talks about it, and what, you know, as someone unbiased and having a sense of listening in the systems, but basically kind of going in fresh. I mean, with a fresh perspective, and that was deliberate. So that was a great opportunity. It was absolutely challenging, and I needed to learn some of the language and way things were described. So I definitely had a lot to learn in certain aspects, and I would only review certain kinds of gear that I felt comfortable doing or that I could describe. But it was very much, I was given a lot of freedom and left to my devices in how I approached things, but with oversight once I submitted the review of editing, but nothing, you know, these weren't sat down co-productions. I think that's something people assume. I mean, that I did the work independently, submitted it, and that got worked on, and I had, and for better or for worse. I mean, no one knows everything, and certainly learned a lot from those experiences and things that could have been done differently or better or anything. It was an opportunity. They took some risks, and so did I, so there we are. And then I was offered the job sometime after that, a couple of months after I did the first 2 sample assignments. But they honestly also hired me for my digital marketing skills and what I could bring to the table there. But at the time, things shifted, and basically print was still very much at their area of focus. So I ended up spending a lot more time working in that arena. Got to work on a lot of other special projects, do a lot of field reporting, which I love, reporting on shows, different kinds of events, and basically just immersing myself in trying to learn as much as possible through interviewing people, asking good questions, and becoming a proxy for the consumer, approaching reviews like that. And also having been a consumer. I mean, I had my own system, and with the exception of the years I went away to school, you know, where it was like more like a boombox, but I still had everything at my parents' house and was able to reclaim that years later when I was back in different areas moving. So anyway.
When it comes to the review, I think there's like this kind of relationship between storytelling and like, what does it sound like in terms of these particular audio descriptors that we choose? Where do you kind of see your writing in terms of that balance? Like, do you like a little bit of storytelling? Do you like to stick to the facts? What do you think that the reader appreciates most about your style of writing in that regard, with storytelling in mind?
I would hope the storytelling is something that's human and approachable and relatable for a certain kind of customer, a certain kind of audience that isn't for everybody and isn't immersed in technical details and not ignoring those factors, because that's critical, that's important. That's what one presumes with higher end equipment or the technologies, or why things cost what they do, the materials, the research, R&D, all of it, what's behind it. So from that perspective, getting that information is also necessary and important, at least as much too as subjective reviewing. And there's a place for objective reviewing. I mean, certainly the work I've been doing at Stereophile, that's much more a focus, at least as much as the objective. They seem to balance both the measurements and so on. That's published. That's part and parcel of the formal reviews. Now, the columnists, there's more story there, but which is, again, why I'm selective about the kinds of products that I might review, because I don't bring to the table an engineer's background or sensibility, and I've never pretended otherwise. So, but the transition part, so I was laid off from the Absolute Sound, another editorial lead that happened concurrently for a sister publication there at the same time. And it was a matter of, last in, first out, but it was, I don't know, it made some waves. It was pretty unexpected. So it was, a challenging time for sure. And it happened to occur a few months before the pandemic and lockdown. So that's, challenges for everyone. So, and I was approached by a few other publications and got offered to cover a show for Stereophile right before lockdown. It was the last event that happened, I think, the Florida Audio Expo that year. And then since then, I've picked up more work and I've remained a regular contributing editor there, and writing my monthly retails column, and then also doing work in time for Analog Planet. So that's been a nice other kind of niche. So, but also, I am an independent contributor, freelancer. So, I've always had other work outside the industry and other jobs to keep me going. But like a lot of people, that's been more challenging lately. So I'm just looking at some different ways to make up for that. See what the future holds. I have a lot of ideas. So we'll see how things play out.
Today's episode of the Occasional Podcast is sponsored by VAC, the Valve Amplification Company. Since 1990, VAC has been handcrafting the world's finest amplifiers and preamplifiers exclusively in the United States. Utilizing vacuum tubes, the most linear amplifying devices in existence, VAC provides sonic transcendence. When it comes to musical truth, it has to be VAC. On the web at vac-amps.com. This episode of the Occasional Podcast is brought to you by AudioQuest. All AudioQuest products, from the company's most modest parts to its most ambitious works of art, are thoughtfully designed to deliver outstanding performance and exceptional value, regardless of price. No matter how little or how much you invest, AudioQuest is made for you. Explore AudioQuest's award-winning cables, power products, and accessories at audioquest.com. Tired of audio reviews that sound like they were written by robots? Us too. For the last 15 years, Part-Time Audiophile has been an open revolt against boring. And this year, we're doubling down. We have a brand new look and a brand new name, but the same old attitude. Find us at pt.audio for all your turntable throwdowns and amplifier face-offs. Great sound meets good times at pt.audio. For you, what do you kind of think the impact of AI is on your work? And I mean that specifically, like, how is it impacting the demand maybe that you're seeing for outside writing? Are you seeing anything from your purview that is a result of the increasing amount of AI out there, from you being able to get work or find work or see the technology integrated into your workflow at all? I'm not accusing you of being an AI writer, but I'm just saying, like, do you see it as from like a demand side at all?
Well, things are really still unfolding, I think, in a lot of ways. And people are seeing, okay, that AI isn't a sinecure, it's not
Panacea?
bullet.
Is that the panacea we all hoped it might be?
Right. Yeah. To be clear, I've never used it in any of the writing that I've done for any of the publications mentioned. But yeah, it's something like transcriptions, like I've used it as an aid for that within certain apps, or, it's not that I haven't used it at all in some of that kind of thing. But as far as aware of it and have dabbled a little, but I'm not keen on using it in the kind of writing that I'm doing currently. But again, for certain kinds of other writing, it's expected and desired to some extent. If I were to go back and do marketing writing or copywriting or certain other kinds of things, it could be more de rigueur in those areas. But I don't think for the kinds of writing that I'm doing, it doesn't apply, or it shouldn't apply. I think that's where you look at, okay, what differentiates you from the bots? So what makes this human? What makes this...
And the funny thing is, I worry about it more every day. Like, what does make us human is a big question for me as I kind of work with AI a little bit more here and there. That really is like, what makes us human, and can it be taught? Can it be learned?
Yeah.
Are we sure that the things that make us human actually make us unique in that sense? I'm not really sure. I think I offer that question up as another story, as a contrast to another story that I heard just this weekend about. I think there is some type of generational thing going on, because a friend of mine works with an individual who is recently hired into the workforce. She has never written her own email. So every email she ever written in the professional realm was written by AI. And she was asked, can you summarize this particular presentation as an exercise? And the reply was, I'll punch it into AI and see what comes up. But it's like almost I'm worried more about the impact of it on learning for people of the new generation.
Absolutely, yeah. Right. And what if it goes away? I mean, I'm not saying that's likely, but it's just
a lot of unknowns right now. I've said this before, but we're on a precipice. We're on the edge of something, of another change. And I just can't see the destination yet. And I'm looking and searching myself, and I think we just don't know. But it is directly affecting, I think, your work, Julie, and mine. And it's harder and harder to ignore with what I see going on in the marketplace and such. So I just like to touch base on that and get your perspective, because I do think it's quite a quandary, and that's something we won't be able to get rid of anytime soon.
Well, there's so many other factors that would be outside the purview of this podcast that I won't get into, that I think are challenges with it. But in small ways, have I used it? Do I use it as a tool, as I said, like primarily for certain functions of transcription? There's certain small micro applications that I use it for, but I think, or organizational, or I think of, resumes, it's bot to bot anyway.
Right.
Like you're going to...
This is something that I've heard more than once. Resume.
If I'm looking for work, it's like, or submitting resumes, then, that's like an area where I could see, okay, this makes sense as a shortcut. There's so many questions. Who developed the LLM? What's the background of which AI tool? What's the origin story? Nothing is in a vacuum, right? Or developed in a vacuum. So I think just looking at a lot of the broader picture is important. So
yeah, I'm mainly anyway. my concern is, will my job and your job be obsolete in 5 years? That's my main concern, to be honest. I'm like, all the other stuff's good, but like I would like it.
I hope not. I hope not. I don't know, but it's but it's definitely getting more complicated every day.
Yeah. Is there anything that you like in particular about covering a show, or anything that really inspires you about writing a review when you get down to do it? Like, what gets you excited when you're like, oh, all right, the piece of gear's in, opening the box, some particular comparison, or when you go to a show, anything like, oh, I can't wait to hear what's new, or how the room comes together, this kind of thing?
When I go to a show, I have, depending what my assignment might be, to a greater or lesser extent, the work's cut out for me in a way. So, marching orders, but I do make time, whatever I can do, to explore, seek out things that just capture my curiosity. So if it's something new or other things maybe beyond the assignment, I'm certainly interested in checking out. It so happens. So or things outside a category or topic that I usually cover or am known for covering. So I go in with a lot of curiosity, always, as I always do. And I think a lot of the technologies have allowed a lot of the barrier to entry in certain categories to come down a lot, which I think is a good thing for the industry more broadly, getting more next generation, more younger people into the hobby or into caring about sound and what the possibilities are. And so I think that's a good thing, and getting more of that into the shows to balance the knock your socks off, no holds barred, state-of-the-art kinds of flagship products that are featured, most often, or especially at the bigger shows, or, someone will take what they call a halo product and then the technology trickling down to other products in time. So, or even materials. I mean, there's so many factors. So, and also the way the industry seems to be segregating more, or maybe segmenting more is a better word. I'm interested also in, okay, where are these gaps that can be bridged between generations or between prices or between even pro audio and consumer audio. I feel like while there's segmentation going on in the audiences or approaches to selling and reaching customers in a very complicated, saturated market, how are people solving these problems, or what are the perspectives, or what are the things to try to reach people and to have things continue? So I think at the same time there's segmentation, there need to be bridges built between these worlds that have been more segregated at the same time. So,
what do you think the biggest bridge is in your mind, or top two? What do you think the biggest bridges that have been built recently are?
I don't know if I've seen any grand solutions or actual bridges, but that's something that I'm thinking about and trying to maybe come up with ideas on. But what I've seen, for example, more recently, are certain kinds of events where I've been surprised to see people of our generation, I'm guessing middle generation or something millennial or Gen X, but an audio event I attended, Common Wave, for example, that I wrote about in my most recent column, or that one drew a cross-section of folks. I mean, there were a couple of events back to back, and just seeing the place flooded with young people listening to all digital from a new artist release. And then the night before, there'd been a somewhat mixed crowd, not completely skewing ultra young, but some cross-generational attendance for Vinyl DJ, where they were recreating a certain experience, David Mancuso's listening parties and his loft parties in New York City that were influential on club culture there in the decades to come. So this was, I think he started them in the very late 60s or very early 70s, I have to remember exactly. And they were recreating that kind of vintage system, but with an upgraded clip speakers and other gear in play. I don't know, it was interesting to me to see that interest in a very throwback kind of homage event there's this interest in curiosity around that history and modern gear made in that tradition. So, and I think of listening bars and things like that and community events, and then some companies that make gear that's a little more prosumer or manufacture for both audiences, where those segmentations happening, I guess. So that's something that I'm curious in exploring more of too.
Yeah, big shout out to Common Wave. They know how to do events right there. I think that's my second favorite event space outside of Capitol Studios, Studio B, which I was very lucky to attend a bunch of stuff there. But the Common Wave, I think the last one I went to was a quad playback setup, 4 channels in each corner. And it was just this huge, massive thing. And like you said, great vibes, great crowd, eclectic music lovers mixing with the hi-fi lovers in a beautiful way, in a beautiful manner, in a great showroom. Yeah, that's a good shout out. I love that place.
Or something that I see more of also is thinking about the design aspects. Like that's another segmentation. Certain, especially higher end brands, are looking to sell to a more luxury focused clientele who aren't really audiophiles at all. Hopefully music lovers at a minimum, but not in the traditional sense. But buying some of these speakers is to complete a luxury room to have that experience within a higher end environment, but also having the design be improved upon even at more affordable prices. Like, I think that's possible now. I think a lot of the technology and general wherewithal, I think it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. I mean, to me, good design can bridge gaps also, or can be a bridge, or a better user interface. I mean, something, a good app, a well-crafted, well-thought-through user experience. So that's something else that I think younger audiences want or expect, the digital natives, so-called, but also for boomers who aren't as tech savvy and don't care and don't want to fool around with a lot of, and I've even seen this at the dealer level, frankly, where they're like, I don't even want to learn how to do this. If I don't want to mess with it, why am I going to show it to my customer? If it's too complicated for me to want to delve into, then it became a non-starter, for one example I can think of. But so I think that kind of good thought into design is really important, and that's something I'm very interested in. And I think, again, that can traverse price points and audiences. So along with music, of course. I mean, I think a lot of young people who are musicians and know what their music should sound like and are really trying to do things in the best quality way that they can, and they deserve better playback. So the barrier to entry, again, there needs to be something for them, I think.
One of the more technical things that comes up when you were talking about the integration of more lifestyle-oriented sizing and design elements is the idea of a Class D. You can get more in a smaller space. Yeah. And this technology it's evolving more every day. From your perspective, what are your thoughts on Class D, where it is right now? And I think we all can acknowledge that there's a lot of potential there for Class D to be great, but maybe it's not all optimized. Where do you kind of see that Class D sits right now in that equation?
Well, I think it's being used and it's gained more acceptance. Well, I think at least for any folks in the know or who've tried Class D of the modern era, the modules, HiPAX or ICE. I think HiPAX is considered one of the better ones, certainly these days, or that I've seen in a unit that I'm working on reviewing. I won't get into that too much just yet. Or even for active speakers, just being compact, or I've got a name, Muso, that's been through a couple more generations maybe now since, but the Gen 2, but having that in there and just the capabilities of what that can deliver in a very small package, being more efficient, putting out less heat, it solves a lot of problems when it's done right. But there are others, who still want the traditional Class A or tubes or a hybrid. I mean, and a unit that I have now and for review upcoming is a hybrid design that uses a couple of tubes in the preamp stage and then a HiPAX amp, but you can choose a lower cost module. And I think that kind of modular flexibility is something that is smart too. I mean, if you're going to invest a little or a lot or any amount of money, I mean, you want some degree of upgradability. I mean, you need to have a path to longevity or ideal, to prevent landfill. So that's, I think, a shortfall of products that are strictly price only because, okay, you're going to have to buy this over again, and you're going to end up spending more money. So it's worth investing in some quality or something. Plus, it's pride of ownership. I think if it's something you're going to use every day and listen to every day, it's worth investing more in insofar as one reasonably can. Everyone's going to start somewhere. There's no shame in wherever you start and what you buy. And frankly, if people don't know there's better than certain very ubiquitous brands out there that have a bigger marketing budget to come to the shows, to get the word out, to let people know there's more available to the story, and it doesn't have to break the bank. But that said, I mean, I have no problem with the biggest and the best and those pushing the state of the art to extremes in material. I mean, I think that kind of advancement of technology and artisanship is commendable and has a place as well. And that's something, we see at shows. But what I get excited about, I mean, I like to explore. I like to see who's doing things a little differently, or certainly who's bringing different music or better music, or incorporating live music into things that are happening, or playback, to hear something recorded in the room. I mean, this doesn't happen terribly often, but I know of some companies that have done this, even just small scale with a singer-songwriter, or to have that be the proceedings to demonstrate, to hear something fresh that they just recorded, played back right away. I mean, that a good demonstration as any of the classic audiophile staples that everyone's heard a whole bunch of times. I mean, they have their place too. I mean, the reference tracks, but if it's, again, I think live music and certain music, that's another area where I go to live music events here, even outside the HiFi world, and I'm amazed and I'm curious about the kinds of acts that draw these cross sections of audiences across generations. I mean, people like my parents' age even, and then their kids are enjoying it too. So, it would be their grandchildren. But no, I think of people my age and older whose kids might also be interested, and that's a mixed bag too. They're like, I don't know if I want to go somewhere my kid might show up.
On that reference track idea, when you get a new piece of gear in for review and you get it set up, you get it plugged in, generally speaking, what is the first thing that you will put on? Is it a reference track, or do you just let me start with what I'm in the mood for today?
Well, I definitely start with just listening for pleasure for whatever I'm listening to. And maybe if it's multiple things, I'll pick what I think might be something specifically, to be honest, something non-audiophile generally to start with, just to kind of get a baseline and just an idea of, okay, what is my experience with this thing going to be like? And just because I believe the reviewer should be a proxy for the consumer. So I want to just start with a clean slate and try to go in with an open mind and not specifically start with a reference track or tracks. So I'll go ahead and just put something on, and depending on what it is, obviously dictated if it's analog or digital, but most of the things I review tend to apply to both. Typically. So speakers, or I do a fair amount of integrated amplifiers, sometimes products that might be considered lifestyle, which can be a dirty word for some. I don't think of it necessarily a bad thing.
What do you make of this new Focal speaker that's like an all-in-one? They did this Utopia line, and they decided to make a true all-in-one. I mean, it still has a wired for high resolution to connect the two speakers, but it's the idea that, there's inside a floor standing speaker. It's high end. It's got the media player in there. It's got the amps in there, and it's just a speaker with the stuff, everything you need in it. What do you make of that kind of lifestyle product?
Just all in there. Well, I mean, honestly, I'd have to hear it. I try not to judge until I hear something, but I wouldn't write it off. I know they make good quality products, and the speakers and the drivers and everything are with their experience in the pro audio world as well.
Right.
So that's certainly something I'd be open to hearing based on some of my experiences with the brand that have been very positive and having reviewed some things in the past. But again, I go in with an open mind. I'd be curious to hear it. And that's something that would certainly have a certain kind of a particular audience that may not necessarily be audiophile.
Yeah.
And more than likely wouldn't be unless they're looking maybe for something outside the separates world, or to simplify, or certain kinds of desires or use cases.
Mm-hmm. It certainly lacks the tinkering stage of the hobby as a whole when you put it all together. And there's no place to upgrade or change anything, even on the cable side, right?
But I mean, there's firmware updates one could make. I mean, again, how much DSP is involved? I mean, I look at things like that. I mean, I like being able to make certain kinds of adjustments that are outside the digital world, but that's a personal thing. So I'm not opposed to such an endeavor or type of product. I'm not opposed to it outright or anything. So
one of the things that we've been talking about on the show is that there's a technical advantage to this if you only have to make one amplifier for one speaker, one driver, and you own the whole chain, right? So there's the disadvantage is you don't get to tinker. The advantage could be that one person's vision can be seen all the way through. Right? Because in a way, when you do components, separate components, you are meshing different visions together along the way.
Well, unless the maker makes all the components in the chain. I mean, that's another best case scenario, or ideal scenario in theory at least. But you also maybe have one perspective. So I think it can be interesting to mix and match separates. I mean, I find that interesting. I mean, I don't go to the extreme with it, but that flexibility is nice. And unless you want everything all in one case, I mean, for a very specific reason. But again, I would say, from my personal perspective, a lot of that would come down to how does it sound? What are the limitations of the amplification? But on the plus side, with any powered speaker, you have inherent advantages in the matching. And if it's done well, presumably, to be able to have all that happen within the same box, you don't have to worry about different impedances. Like, it solves a lot of problems that would be inherent in, or potentially would have with outboard separates. So, and again, there's adjustments you can do with all kinds of DSP would compensate for any number of cases, or the room. It solves a lot of room issues too, potentially. The size of the room, the placement of the speakers, it greatly can simplify certain things. And that could be for better or for worse. A singular perspective on what sounds good or great. And certainly you can do a lot more measuring with that and have something like the Class D modules we talked about earlier in the mix and a lot more efficiency. But I mean, I've heard things like that done well. But again, it comes down to the technology. How well does it work? Are there firmware updates? Presumably there are. Can they be done by the user? Again, I would come back to, for something like that, half that would be, for me, what's the user experience like? So what is the app like? Is it only app? Is it only wired or only Bluetooth? Or, what are the limitations? What is the experience like to use it and to hit the ground running? Yeah, for me, a lot would come down to those things as well.
And there's another worry too as we move towards this completely digital inspired era where I'm just going to give one example off audio and then maybe one other, but I used to have this home lighting kit that was made by GE, and I thought it was pretty swell, and it worked well, better than the others. And one day they just said, you know what? We're not going to support this anymore, and it's gone. And it just stopped working out of nowhere. And it wasn't that the support was gone. They just pulled the plug on this product. Now, I think one of the worries is, as you brought up, the UI being so important with the apps and the digital control. The second issue is if the company stops making or supporting the app even after something might happen. That is a growing concern, I think, among these companies that aren't so big that go this route. So it's almost like, in a way, you used to bet on the quality as part of the longevity, but now in the digital age, we have to bet that the company's going to be around into the long term so you can continue to use their digital products.
Right, or if they stop supporting something, even if the company's around after X number of years, if they just outright make it non-upgradable, the planned obsolescence factor that's inherent in a lot of technology. What happens with choose your technology maker, your big tech company. So I think being, mindful of that also. And the firmware, and again, all the, you're relying on network stability and bandwidth, and what do you do if that's down? Or I don't know. I like having options. So, when and if that happens, if that's my central system, I don't want that to be the only thing that I have. Let's put it that way. But that's a personal preference.
Very audiophile of you. Very audiophile. Like, more options, please. I like more options.
Yeah, more options, but I like having... No, but I also... I'm not going to discount the convenience. I don't think convenience is bad. I stream. When I cook, there are applications where it's like... I don't want to mess around. I just want to get to my music. Bam. I'm not there for the sound quality in the extreme in certain use cases. I'm just not. If I'm making dinner, if I'm passive listening kinds of things, especially, I'm just not. I want it to sound good at a certain level, but it doesn't have to be, I'm not going to sit down and have it be the immersive, as good as I can make it with this system kind of sound. I don't have that expectation for certain kinds of products or certain, ideally you could make them that good, but I think the way I listen to, or I think I'd be apt to listen to certain kinds of products is just different than whether I'm sitting down for some more immersive, critical listening, if you will, experience, or I want to hear things sound as good as they can sound in my room on a given system.
We talked a little bit about the convenience of digital, which I think is definitely a high point for that format. Do you think there's anything unique about the sound of analog? So you mentioned you have a big record collection. Do you think that there's any unique beauty to analog reproduction?
I would say... For me, I feel like there is, but again, there's also, it ties in with nostalgia, it ties in with the ritual, with the physical object, with, there's so many factors that come into play that are peripheral that I think are hard to separate. And again, depending on, there's so many more things that can go wrong with vinyl, so many more applications.
I like that part. I like that. That's a good comment. That's true. There's a lot more things that can go wrong. But that's true of a multi-driver speaker. Too, it's just the more the more variables and factors, and so sometimes there is beauty in a certain simplicity. But at the same time, wow, when you can get everything just right, when you have that experience, it can be transcendent. But again, you've got to have a lot more God smiling on you in every aspect. The speed controller, the low noise floor, grounding, obviously the cartridge setup, minimizing vibrations, the preamplification, just so much into play. So I feel like to get that
next level of sound, the investment is arguably greater for analog to get it to really, I think, make the vinyl make a difference. But obviously with the physical format, there are inherent limitations of bandwidth and so on. But there are things that I believe that one hears or perceives as hearing that are above what the audible threshold of where maybe certain digital formats cut off, or where that is, that on vinyl, in spite of its limitations of bandwidth and what you have to do for the mastering and to get everything done correctly to have it sound as good as it can. I mean, and that's even before the pressing, before even again, there's so many things that come into play. But I think when you get those things right, it can be really transcendent or just fun. Look, the majority of my record collection would not be considered audiophile. Mm-hmm. So I can start with that. So it's music loving first, but with an appreciation for, okay, I at least have a baseline that I want to achieve that I would consider, okay, this is acceptable. So if that makes me an audiophile, I feel like I'm more a music lover first.
Yeah. You talked about the art of simplicity a little bit. One of the things that editor-in-chief PT Audio website, Mark Phillips, who often comes on the show, says he finds a lot of beauty in the simplicity of a really good integrated paired with a two-way bookshelf speaker. Do you feel there's any unique beauty in that arrangement?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I encounter often, or I feel like that's a good middle-of-the-road place for audiophiles, maybe who have a certain size room or a certain kind of space, and have a greater possibility of getting more bass. But I think even for a two-way floor stander, you could have more bass with, I've heard ports and certain designs and tuning achieve really remarkable bass for the size of the room, or at least give some impression. I mean, you're not going to get subterranean low end and that kind of control you get with a great subwoofer integration. But, again, it depends on what kind of music you like and what your window is. So, but I do review a lot of integrated amps, and I think, again, if it's, whether or not it's Class D, but I think if there's enough isolation and you can get the noise floor down and maybe have an outboard phono stage, but that wouldn't have to be the case. I don't know. I've never really done that many monoblocks, partly because of space, but that's simplifying of things, but yet if you could isolate things properly, that obviously is a key component to keep the noise down and that separation of the elements within integrated. But not just convenience-wise, but yeah, it's a bit more approachable, or modular parts too, or a smart way to go.
So you got a lot of things going on right now. Tell me a little bit about any of the certain projects you're working on, or maybe what you have coming out soon. What's going on?
Well, I don't want to say too much because I'm still getting some things lined up, but I do a weekly radio show it's a community radio station, but it's totally independent also. It's very old school FM, primarily music driven. It's called On the Pulse, and it does stream online, and we have an auto archiving now.
If people want to find it, what's the best way for them to stream it online?
It's waifradio.org. That's waifradio.org. And there's a great array of programs on there, just about anything you could wish for, including a lot of international programs. And we celebrated our 50-year anniversary last year. Pretty exciting. And we just have to keep our gear in order because it is very old school. I mean, charm and challenges of all of that, if you will. But again, online streaming and archiving, it's On the Pulse. It's just 1 hour a week. It's Thursdays, 5 to 6 Eastern time. The charm of analog. Nothing can go wrong, but there's a lot that can be special and beautiful about it as well. So.
I think there's something extremely special and beautiful about terrestrial radio. I got my start in college in some radio.
Oh, you did college radio, yeah?
And oh my God, great times, great station.
Also, I went to UK, and there's WRFL down there, which is pretty cool, way far left. I wasn't directly involved at the time, but it's still ticking too.
I just have one more little verbal exercise that I've been doing at the end of each episode for this season. I wonder if you might want to partake. It's a series of 4 questions, and you can pick only one. So the exercise is just to say one of the words. There's no elaboration. It's just a one-word answer.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Would you rather have a Mint LS35A or a Mint Quad ESL 57?
Quad ESL 57.
Would you rather have pristine soundstage or tone?
Tone.
Height, width, or depth?
Depth.
And then the last question, you have to pick one. Either perfect bass or perfect treble.
Perfect treble, because imperfect treble is painful, or can be.
That's it. Congratulations. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you. Yay. And I like that. Yeah, I kind of like the rapid fire. That's fun.
So, Julie Mullins, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you greatly, and your perspective has just been wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. It's been fun. I hope I didn't go too far down too many rabbit holes. But it's been great. I appreciate you having me on, Brian.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
The Occasional Podcast is a production of the Part-Time Audiophile Network, which includes parttimeaudiophile.com, The Occasional Magazine, the PTA newsletter, and audiohead.com. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The Occasional Podcast is produced and hosted by Brian Hunter, executive produced by Scott Hall at PTA Productions. The Occasional Podcast and its original associated music is monitored, mixed, and mastered on the Focal Trio 6 BE studio monitors. AI songs produced by Udio.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Occasional Podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.